You know, the diameter of the string you use is a very important thing. You know, if you use a very thin string, like a guitar player that uses a 9 gauge for the E string, will play very easily because it's a very thin string, and so it doesn't take a lot of effort to touch it or whatever. But the problem is that the less mass the string has, the less it sustains. You know, the more mass it has, the more it sustains, in the same way that if you have a big bell, it rings longer than if you have a little bitty bell. And so guitar players that are novices, you know, tend to play really light gauge strings. And as a result of that, they get into the habit of playing light gauge strings, and they can't adjust to a heavier gauge string. And as a result of that, they wind up, you know, almost handicapping themselves into because of the nature of the strings that they play. On the other hand, if you start off with a heavy gauge string, a heavier gauge string, let's say that you play an 11 instead of a 9 for your high E string, and let's say that instead of a 42 gauge for your low E string, you have a 56 gauge. Okay? And so you're much heavier strings. And so if you learn on heavy strings, you suffer more pain because it takes more pressure to but you don't get yourself handicapped where you can only play on thin strings. And a guitar that's strung with heavier strings has a tremendous amount more sustain than a guitar that doesn't have that. And of course, it's a style issue also. If I want to play chunky music on a Fender Stratocaster, I can have really light gauge strings, it doesn't matter much. If I want to play that really raw, bluesy, you know, Stevie Ray Vaughan, you know, type of music, I need really heavy strings. And Stevie Ray Vaughan was notorious for having very heavy gauge strings on his guitars. And he learned on heavy gauge strings, which means that he had the dexterity in his fingers to be able to pull any string up, you know, all the way up to the top of the fingerboard at will. Whereas most people who are trained on very thin gauged strings will never be able to do that. They don't have the dexterity, they don't have the strength in their fingers necessary to move the string. So you can get yourself into a lot of bad habits very early on if somebody doesn't sort of counsel you, you know, in how to get that done.